The Bottom Line is a conservative space for news, as subjectively expressed in transparency in their comments. The Bottom Line is transmitted from Monday to Friday from 8 to 9 p.m. Indiana Radio, Latina 5.0, from Latinos to Latinos.
The Bottom Line with the Gordials
is sponsored by El Sueño Americano newspaper, best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions: El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news, the best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Welcome back to The Bottom Line. This is Deb Gordills, and my guest today is Tom Donaldson. We were talking about El Sueño Americano, the American dream. And, you know, I've been reading, people are wondering, is the American dream still out there? Is it still available for people looking to achieve that? Tom?
Well, the bottom line, if we follow the present policies on a national basis, and if you follow the policies of the Pat Quinn administration, the answer is going to be no. You have to change what's being done, or there won't be an American dream. Because you're seeing the American dream, as I say, suffocated. In the case of Illinois, it's suffocated through higher taxes, higher regulations. Let's kind of, there was a story you once told me. It was about the ice cream vendor. Mm-hmm. And maybe this kind of puts it in perspective here. And you went to him and you basically, the story, as you told me the story, you know, in the past the ice cream was $1.50, and he charged you $3 per ice cream cone. And you looked at him, so you know, last year this was $1.50, today's $3. He said, last year I paid a licensing fee of $100, now I'm paying $2,400.
Crazy.
But the point is, he's already $2,400 in the hole, and the bottom line is those are the things that suffocates the American dream.
Yeah.
And you look, obviously, on the nationwide basis, you got Obamacare, you got a health care plan that's destroying the best health care system in the world.
Yeah.
And basically,
hospitals are shutting down everywhere. I know in Georgia it's the 5th hospital that now is shutting down due to Obamacare. So they're just destroying us with their policies. It's taxes. The big news for starting March 1st, Chase Bank now has to report every cash deposit that goes in there. Many of these Hispanic vendors are only making cash as it's coming into them from their businesses selling on the street. So they pay this big absorbent vendor license. Now when they go to deposit their money in Chase Bank has to report the cash.
You know, there's a way you can look at that. You can look at that, you know, the regulation, but you know what they're really saying in effect to the Hispanic businessman? We're going to treat you like if you're a drug dealer.
That's right. I'm thinking, why? Really, this is going to be the standard policy. Chase Bank has to report any cash deposits in excess, I think, of $100, which is crazy. And so, I don't know. Maybe the IRS will knock on your door and tell you, you deposited a total of $4,000 into your bank account this past year. Explain it.
Yeah, and I just think, quite frankly, again,
this affects waitresses. This affects any vendors, street vendors, whether it's baseball shirts you're selling over at the ballpark or, elotes you're selling, corn out on the street, or ice cream. There's already a monitoring system. And speaking of monitoring system, the American Civil Liberties Journal or group, forgot the guy's name who runs it, but it's amazing. I want to do a show on him tomorrow. They just reported that Obama, and they play it over and over, and you could get it on Google or YouTube, is now demanding that there is monitoring systems placed in radio stations, radio shows, and or media outlets that are slamming his administration. Crazy. Yeah. The FCC is going to bring in a monitor because you have been talking negatively about Obama. So I guess my producer is now getting a heads up that he's going to have the FCC calling him because I can't wait till we get this bum out of office. So I haven't said anything nice about Obama and Obamacare or his administration, all his other cronies he's got up there. I want them all out. I expect the FCC to be floating in over here and coming to small town USA.
Well, they're the IRS.
Oh, you listen. Yeah, go ahead. I expect to be audited sometime soon. I don't know. I guess I'll just call the tax guy and tell him deal with it. I don't know what else to do.
Well, I was going to say, now that I'm on your show, I guess I'll be audited with you.
Yeah, there you go. There's a way to keep people off my show. Let's just, look. If anybody would have told us 5 years ago, seriously, Tom, and I asked this question of Scott. If anybody would have told us 5 years ago, would have said to me, Deb, in 5 years, you're going to be doing a radio show trying to disclose all of this crazy, like, anti-American policies and regulations that are coming out of the White House. I'd be like, are you cuckoo? I mean, no, let me go backwards, because in 2008, I was worried about that. So now we're going to go back. If anybody would told me this 10 years ago, I would have said, no way.
Well, let me throw
this
back.
Is scary.
Well, here's the scary. Let me throw back this way, because I'm going to kind of tie it into Illinois. Mm-hmm. And that is, you look at the IRS, going after political opponents.
All right.
Well, who's the biggest advocate of that? One of the biggest advocates to do exactly that, who basically has called on the IRS to do that. It's Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin has been one of the leaders to basically push the IRS to go after political opponents. And this is the same guy who basically, who's been voting for every major legislation that has basically taken away your economic freedom, has made you poorer. And my question is, how do you trust a man who basically is willing to use the government power?
Dick Durbin is the U.S. Senator. For our listeners who aren't sure who Dick Durbin is, Dick Durbin is the U.S. Senator of Illinois who loves Obama and Rahm Emanuel and all the Democrat policies. And so he's been voting for or supporting the IRS or asking the IRS to come after us. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, basically, he did exactly that in 2010 and beyond that. In 2012, he said that he had any problems with it. He basically asked the IRS to investigate conservative organizations, the 501c4s and everything else.
So we have to start this Dump Durbin campaign now.
Yeah, well, here.
Don't vote for the bum. He's throwing us over a bridge.
Well, let me put it this way. Let's ask your viewers this. I'd be curious what your viewers would think of a politician who would do the following. A politician the day after the Lehman Brothers crashed. When this politician went into a meeting with the Secretary of Treasury, was pretty much given inside information, traded on that inside information to make millions of dollars.
Durbin made millions of dollars?
Absolutely. Durbin was on those, he basically went in. The first thing he did was call his stockbroker.
We need to audit him.
Called his stockbrokers after meeting with the Secretary of Treasury to buy, for example, I think it was to buy stock into, Berkshire Hathaway because they were getting ready to bail out. I'm trying to think if it was Goldman Sachs.
Wow.
3 days later. I mean, this is the kind of person, crony capitalism at its very worst, who's profited from the system, who became part of the 1%, not through his own efforts, not through the hard work that many of your viewers and listeners, but basically doing a thing that would have gotten you and me in jail.
Right.
At that time, he was exempt from Congress. Congress was actually exempted from some of those laws.
Right.
So the bottom line is, you got a guy who, quite frankly, is willing to profit himself, while you and me are worried about whether or not we're going to have a paycheck the next month. We're going to be able to keep our house. And that is your Democratic policy in a nutshell. Crony capitalism at its very worst.
Okay, let's continue talking about the Dump Durbin. So we dumped Durbin. Durbin's got no primary race, I take it? Nobody's running against him. Is there somebody running for U.S. Senate in the Democrat primary against Dick Durbin? I don't think so.
Not that I know of.
No, okay. So let's look at the Republican candidates.
Well, we don't. I mean, obviously, with Republicans, you got Don Truax, who is a young businessman on the way up, but basically at this point, I'm going to say is Jim Oberweis, strictly because Oberweis can self-finance.
Okay, so here you go. This is a Hispanic radio station all the way around. 60% of my listeners are bilingual. You got Jim Oberweis, and we know that the baggage with him is some of the comments he made about immigration. Yeah. Okay, so he screwed up. He makes great ice cream. My daughter loves his chocolate milk. I guess I'm going to ask you to forgive Oberweis's oversight and either vote Truax or Oberweis, but we can't vote Durbin in. We got to dump him.
Oh, well, man,
So,
face it, do you want the guy?
Who's the lesser of the two evils? Is it the ice cream guy or is it Durbin?
Why? Let me take it even. Let's take it. Yeah. But let's take a comparison of those two.
I mean, we got to put it out there.
Yeah, no,
Okay, I mean, he's a Republican candidate, but he's got baggage. Let's talk about the baggage.
But let's talk about the baggage of, to me, it's the baggage of Durbin is far worse. I mean, think of it this way.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Here's the choice you would put into. You have a man who made his own business, who created wealth.
On the backs of the taxpayers.
No, I'm talking about no, he created wealth, he created a business, created opportunities for other people to work for him. That's Jim Oberweis.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Versus the guy who basically
On the backs of the
on the
taxpayers.
backs of the taxpayers. You tell
Yeah.
me which
Yeah.
guy do you want in your as the United States Senator?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think, and to me, that's the question because because here's the thing: with the American dream is what we need to start talking about. Suano Americana. People want to know that if I put in the hard work, like a Jim Oberweis did, I'm going to be able to profit. I'm going to keep my money. I can grow. I can produce opportunities for myself, for my children.
Yeah.
Expand my business, employ people. They want to know they can make it in this country.
That's right.
What they don't want, but what they don't want is to have a system that's rigged against them, and that's what you got right now. You got too many people who basically say the system is rigged against me. They're losing faith in that American dream, but we need to restore that. And I think, quite frankly, we can talk about the baggage of Oberweis at another time, or if you want. I just soon talk about what are you going to get with the continuation of the same policy. The death of the American dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Truax and Oberweis have a primary, and we'll see if we can't get them on the show at some point in the future. But right now, it's like 3.5 weeks away. We'll find out who the real candidate is, whoever wins, and then, it's dump Durbin time, and we could talk more about that and, have him on the show. I don't, not going to have Durbin on the show, but definitely whoever wins that primary there in that Senate race.
So right now I would say that'll probably be Oberweis, but that's basically where we're at. But again,
And you also don't know who's going to run as an independent, who may come out of the woodwork as an independent candidate.
Well, I'm not going to count on an independent coming out of the woodwork. Well, let's say one that's going to actually matter.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be realistic. Basically, you're going to have a Republican versus Durbin. That's not going to be, But interesting enough, Durbin is only running about 50% against these, for an incumbent who's been here for a while.
Yeah.
It's not like people aren't in a striking distance, and it's not like you don't have enough on this guy. Let's just put it this way: in most states, Durbin would be roadkill with his record. Right. But this is the state of Illinois where corruption and crony capitalism is a pathway to success.
Well, it's fraud and fraud. If you know that you can have 25,000 votes on an average given to you that are fraudulent votes before anybody even wakes up in the morning on election day, it's easy to be arrogant. It's easy to be a crook. It's easy to be a thief. It's easy to be to just say the hell with the people and what they want. It doesn't matter because you can't change things. So it's important that everybody comes out to vote because that will stop the arrogance. We need a high voter turnout.
Let's just put it this way. It's important for Republicans to come out to vote or conservatives to come out to vote.
Or Democrats who want to vote Republican for the first time. I want crossover votes. We can get crossover votes.
Yeah.
I mean, those 23% Hispanics who no longer approve of Obama, that puts that's 23% crossover votes already.
Well, then those are the kinds of numbers that win elections.
That's right.
And right now we have the opportunity to do exactly that. We also have the opportunity throughout the state to take a couple of congressional seats if we choose to do so. The real issue is going to come in, are we going to basically challenge the status quo? Or are we going to be electing candidates satisfied with the status quo?
Yeah.
And right now, the status quo is killing the American dream in Illinois. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Tom, for being on my show. We're now rounding up today's show, and we have, of course, commercials and your commercial to play after this. Any closing words on this?
Well, I'm going to basically say to the Hispanic voters out there who basically for years have voted Democratic, maybe out of habit, maybe because it was the...
Some of them think it's illegal to vote for Republican because they have to do paperwork. I'm not kidding you. You don't have to do paperwork. They've been lying to you.
Bottom line is this.
You don't have to file something.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the bottom line. If you own your own business, you should not be voting... You should not be voting... You should not be voting Democratic. If you basically have investment, you should not be voting Democratic. If you want a good quality school system, you should not be voting Democratic. If you believe in the sanctity of life, you have no business voting Democratic. Basically, what you have to do is change your habits. And that's what I would say. Start examining the Republican platform, see where it will work for you, and you will basically begin the process of saying, enough with the status quo, it's time for a change.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being on our show. And I want to thank all our listeners for listening today. This is Deb Gordills on WPJX 1500 AM. You've been listening to The Bottom Line. Have a great day. Be safe out there. Bye.
The Bottom Line is a conservative space for news, as objectively expressed in transparency in their comments. The Bottom Line is transmitted from Monday to Friday from 8 to 9 p.m. Indiana Radio, Latina 5.0, from Latinos to Latinos.
The Bottom Line with the Gordials
Is sponsored by El Sueño Americano newspaper, best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions: El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news, the best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
No, progressives are. I don't know about you, but I've always wanted to be a little bit more like China or Al Jazeera. Wouldn't that be great? Oh man, if we could just have a government official telling us what we should and shouldn't cover. By the way, there's a new survey out. If I said to you, in the entire world, freedom of press, where is the United States of America? You would think top 10, right? Well, last year we were top 20. We are now, where are we? Number 46. Sorry, it was been expected. Number 46. 46th in freedom of the press. Look at some of these. Portugal, Belize is better. Belgium, Uruguay, Ghana is better. El Salvador is better than we are. And why is this? Because we are now arresting reporters. Oh, you probably haven't heard about that because the reporters are afraid to report on it. They're clamping down, and it's about to get much worse. In fact, the FCC commissioner didn't try to hide the fact that his monitoring opens the door to possible government abuse and the ability to intimidate news outlets. Listen to what he actually is willing to say on the record. The agency plans to send researchers to grill reporters, editors, and station owners about how they decide which stories to run. A field test in Columbia, South Carolina is scheduled to begin this spring. You got to stop this. There is no way that we're number 46 for very long in this country. Just a few more journalists falling from their apartment windows or having their cars mysteriously blow up. And we beat Russia on that list in no time. The noose is being put around this country's neck, and it is being tightened by progressives on both sides of the aisle. And I'm telling you, the rest of the world, what we're seeing in Kiev right now, what we're seeing in the streets, they had today, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, they have snipers, government snipers, just shooting protesters in the streets. We are on the sides of the protesters, but have you heard the president? The president practically went over and just hugged everybody in Tahrir Square. He's not talking about this one. And it's also happening in Venezuela. Do you remember when I did this map over at Fox, and I showed this map? There it is over there. And I said, right here, I had that map, and I said, they're going to work together against Israel, work against capitalism, work together to overturn stability. The protests become contagious. They cascade. They sweep the Middle East. They destabilize Europe and the rest of the world. We're here, gang. We're here. You want to see our...
Well, okay. I don't know if you've heard enough. We have a big problem. So we're number 46. That was new news to me. You know, I think that the average person would tell you that they really thought America was freedom of the press was probably, we were number one. Come on, San Salvador? San Salvador, I'm thinking, hello? Spain was ahead of us. Okay. United Kingdom was ahead of us. We have a serious problem. How the heck are we number 46? I don't mean number 46. I'm going to be number 1. Of course, I like winning. But we have a serious problem. Freedom of speech. On the list among nations, we are number 46. Do you believe that, Doreen? We're number 46. Crazy. Okay, so we obviously need to get off the couch. I know it's tempting to sit there and watch reruns of New Girl. And 2.5 Men. Funny stuff sometimes. But you know what? We need to get off the couch, and we need to get engaged, and we need to run for office, and we need to stand up for our rights. Otherwise, one day we're going to wake up, and that TV is going to be carried out, because there is going to be a whole new ball game happening in this country. And I'm really worried about it, and I think that you should be too. Let's continue.
You just keep watching and remaining silent. I'm sorry. I know you are not silent, but boy, too many of our neighbors are. And they're going to wake up, and it's going to be too late. Jay Sekulow, he is one of the really good guys. He is the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. Jay, have I overstated this at all? Please pull me back.
No, Glenn, I'll tell you something, we've actually read this monstrosity from the FCC, almost 80 pages of it. And it basically takes the old fairness doctrine on steroids. And the fairness doctrine, you had to present a balanced view in your news reporting and station reporting. This one says we're going to put monitors, FCC, they call them researchers, but they're monitors into these stations, voluntary, of course. But the voluntary, everybody understands, the FCC grants the license, so there's really nothing voluntary about this. You start saying no, and all of a sudden your license doesn't get renewed. They're going to put monitors in there to determine how your philosophical viewpoint is determined in news editorials, and how you decide what stories to promote and what position.
Okay, wait a minute. So the FCC is the one that gives you your license so you could have a radio show. So the FCC obviously gives us a license here at WPJX 1500 AM so that we could have a radio show here. And they're probably going to walk into this station and they're going to say, get Gordills off that radio show now, or we're pulling your license. I bet you that's what they're going to say. So I'm just letting my producer know I totally get it. It's okay if you cancel the show. And if you take us off, save yourself. Just save yourself. Just run. This is crazy stuff. This is crazy stuff. So you've been listening to The Blaze, who's up on YouTube, and he has been talking about the FCC monitoring of American newsrooms and radio stations. And Jay Sekulow, who seems to be, the man of the hour right now, trying to maintain our liberties and keep us free here from invasion into our privacy. Let's continue to listen to him as he's talking on this show. This is crazy stuff.
To take. Now, since when is it the job of the federal government to do this? And the answer is it is not. It's a complete violation of the First Amendment's freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of association. And Glenn, the reality is, and you said it really correct, this is worse than the camel's nose in the tent. This is the government in your newsroom, your editorial meeting, as you call it, your pit meeting before you go on air, and they're there with their badge saying, gee, that's an interesting, why'd you go that way? And
I have to tell you, we wouldn't have been able to.
I think the answer to that needs to be no.
We wouldn't have been able to report anything that we reported at Fox. We wouldn't have been able to do any of it. I wouldn't be able to do this because I wouldn't be able to say, wait a minute, let's go investigate this on the government. They're arresting reporters right now who are trying to leak information. Everything that we have done on For the Record, we would not be able to do because there would be no secrecy. They already have the NSA. They already have intimidated the people that are giving us information on For the Record. Now you're going to intimidate, and you have to tell them. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, well, look what they did to James Rosen. I mean, if our friends at Fox News. I mean, and going after following his parents around, or the Associated Press with the subpoenas issued there. So the president's complaining about conservative media in every chance he gets to talk about it. So are we shocked that now the FCC puts in this, pilot program? They say, oh, it's just voluntary. It's just a pilot program. But, the reality is this is typical government. If it's a pilot program, that means once the pilot's successful and they're getting what they want, they expand it to everybody else.
Okay,
so I think the American people need to rise up here. And I'll tell you something, Glenn. We launched a campaign yesterday on air on our radio broadcast, and in 24 hours had almost 50,000 signatures at aclj.org. I mean, people are responding, and
Okay, first of all, I want you to go to aclj.org and sign a petition and get hooked up with his organization. aclj.org is obviously giving you the up-to-date news on this FCC monitoring of American newsrooms. I mean, those of you who watch television and who watch the news and listen to the radio, how would you like it that you're not going to be able to get the truth out of anything that's going around anywhere? Even news that might have to save your life, you're not going to be able to know about it because they don't want you to know about it. I mean, and this whole thing about journalists being arrested because they're coming up against Obamacare, listen, I believe it. I mean, I was in Wrigleyville, used to live in Wrigleyville by Wrigley Field, grew up there. And I was once pulling a radio flyer wagon with my two daughters. This was like 5-6 years ago, so they were way younger. And we were taking plants. We had bought some plants at a nearby nursery to take over to our neighbor who was battling cancer. And she loved to plant plants. And we had our little dog with us. I'm pulling the radio flyer. My two daughters are on their scooters, and they were little. And 2 squad cars stop in front of me. And they attempt to arrest me. And my neighbor comes out, one of the neighbors who I knew on the block comes out and says, "What are you doing?" Whose husband happens to be an attorney. And she's like, you can't just arrest her to just arrest her. Are you insane? I was with my kids. I'm just like looking at them going, really, what's the charge? And they said, I don't know what it was. They said something about they're going to make a call that it's something about trespassing. And I said, trespassing? Who's trespassing? And they said, oh, your kids were playing on a porch. I said, they were talking to the neighbor's kids, and all the kids were running up and down a porch of a house there. And they wanted to arrest me. I'm not kidding you. They brought like 3 squad cars. By then, all the neighbors start coming out. Everybody was in arms over what was going on. And threatened to, people were taking pictures. I mean, it was crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. I made a call to my attorney and said, okay, I don't know what's going to go on, but you need to get over here. And thank God, my attorney got there. But they ended up when a white shirt sergeant, this is Chicago Police Department, seriously, in Wrigley Field, in Wrigleyville, okay, great community. I'm pulling a radio flyer wagon with 2 kids and a dog and plants for the neighbor who's a real good friend of mine, who's got cancer, who's passed away since then, God rest her soul, Barb. And she had to come outside, with her wig on and her hat, and she's like, what's going on? And the kids were crying. It was horrible. It was horrible. And I'm like thinking, and this was, you know what this was? This was the alderman's way of letting me know that I shouldn't try to build the Republican Party in Chicago, Illinois. That I should stay out of politics and stay out of, running Republican candidates or conservative candidates, especially Hispanic conservative candidates, because at the time we had about 11 Hispanic candidates running for office. This was their way to let me know that it was wrong. And you know what? If I wouldn't have had my kids with me, I'd have been like, okay, play your game. Use the police department, the Chicago Police Department, to try to strong arm and scare people out of politics, because that's their tactics. They just make up stuff and arrest them and charge them and all this other crud. I said, but my children were there and my children were crying. So I have to be honest with you. Later on that day, I didn't get arrested, but I still got a ticket. And then when I showed up to court, they dismissed it. And I got this ticket. That's all I remember. And I remember my lawyer saying, who the hell did this and why? I'm like, it's all political. It's just the way Chicago plays with you if you're trying to go against the Democratic machine. And so that was it. And I still remember making a call to the alderman. And you guys, I have to tell you, that I have never used more bad language than I did in that phone call, because I was furious that they would do this in front of my children, that they would play this card game in front of my children. I get how politics can be played, and you do it one-on-one, and you keep the kids out of it. So they did not do that. And to this day, I'm sure it's a memory that still haunts my children. A rude awakening to Chicago politics and the police department, and how political machine Democrats use the police department and its workers to intimidate people who are involved in the Republican Party or in politics. It's just crazy. But I don't want to get out of what we're talking about here. I want to finish up with listening to this piece by Glenn Beck and Jay Sekulow on the FCC monitoring the newsrooms. So anyway, my point was, if they went after me just for trying to build the Republican Party, and now I'm on the radio slamming Obama's administration, I expect another visit probably sometime soon. So here we go. Let's listen.
With you covering it now, we'll add to that significantly. The fact of the matter is, this is the greatest assault on free press that we've seen in my lifetime, and I cannot imagine anyone, right, left, or center, saying this is a good thing.
Yeah, no, there's no one left with any common sense a bone in their body that says this is a good thing at all. Jay, I want to have you on the radio show tomorrow. We'll expose it on the radio show and it really have people understand what it is in great detail. Can you do me a favor and give me the address if people want to sign up and stand? Why is that important, and what's the address?
It's aclj.org, so just aclj.org. And I'll tell you why it's important, Glenn. The Constitution says we have the right to petition our government for the redress of a grievance. This is exactly that. And there's already some congressional movement. But like you said, we got to get the people that understand constitutional conservatism, that understand the First Amendment in Congress to get this thing. There's not a middle ground here. It has to be stopped, period. The answer to this program needs to be, it's gone. That's the only successful conclusion.
Is the ACLU on your side? It's got to be the left has to be.
They haven't expressed an opinion on this one yet. But it's interesting. On those IRS regulations that are proposed, the ACLU and the ACLJ taking the exact same position, saying that those are fundamental violations of free speech.
Well, these are just it's so egregious. There's no way. I mean, unless you're a complete and total sham,
you're right.
There's no way that you can say this is right. Jay, thank you very much for all of your hard work and your stand on this.
And there you have it. So we ran over our time, and we're going to go to commercial break, and we'll be back with Scott Davis, and we're going to be talking about Chicago politics and sort of elaborating a little bit more of that. But we're not going to let this topic down. We'll be back to talk about the FCC, not in today's programming, but I can assure you that'll be a discussion we'll have on Monday. I want to thank all of you for being here with me. This is Deb Gordills on WPJX, 1500 AM. Please stay tuned to the commercials that are here, and I'll see you when we get right back with Scott Davis. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.
The Bottom Line is a conservative space for news, as objectively expressed in transparency in their comments. The Bottom Line is transmitted from Monday to Friday from 8 to 9 p.m. Indiana Radio, Latina 5.0, from Latinos to Latinos.
The Bottom Line with the Gordials
is sponsored by El Sueño Americano newspaper, best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions: El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news, the best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome today to The Bottom Line. I'm really excited to have a friend and a colleague and somebody who's been around politics for a long time as our guest today. I'd like to introduce to you Jim Edwards. Jim Edwards is the founder and director of the Illinois Leadership Institute. Is that correct, Jim? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deb. Yeah, it's the Illinois Leadership Project.
And what can you tell me about the Illinois Leadership Project?
Well, basically our mission is to identify, recruit, empower, and train future leaders for Illinois. And we are starting for the most part, in politics, because that's the biggest weakness. You know, Illinois is considered the political cesspool of the nation, and so we need some new young people to get trained, and we need to empower them to take over some of the leadership in the future, because they are our future. And we hope to get decent, trained, smart, conservative, hopefully young people with morals that can step up into future leadership positions, because doesn't appear to be a lot of that in our current political leadership on either side right now.
Yeah, Jim, tell me a little bit about your background, because you didn't just start this with the Illinois Leadership Project. You have several years of background experience as a leader yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when I first got out of grad school, I went to work for a national home furnishings company, and they did high volume operations with a showroom, 40,000 square foot showrooms with large warehouses attached, high volume stuff. So this company hired me and trained me to become basically a troubleshooter for them. So they'd send me out all over the country to fix things. And early on, I realized that rarely did they have any kind of operational problems. It was usually people problems, and so I usually end up firing the guy at the top, and the company would send in a right-thinking superstar to replace them, and they would turn the business around like clockwork. Sometimes so fast your head would spin. It just blew my mind. So I became conditioned to see how fast good, right-thinking leadership can improve an operation. And so, a few years later, I was out in Sycamore, and then I got elected mayor. And it was a little different story then, because you can't fire people that aren't doing a good job, that are elected officials. So you have to either figure out a way to replace them or work with them. And of course, I worked with them as best I could, and there weren't too many that were not cooperative, but some of them, some people just don't have a vision. And I think they should actually have some kind of a test, to be honest with you, Jeff, that, people have, they're making decisions on behalf of taxpayers 10, 15, 20 years down the road. They ought to be tested on whether they have any kind of a vision or not. Anyway, so that's when I started getting into politics, but I don't consider being a mayor of a town being a political position. It's an administrative position. Then about 3.5 years ago, I met up with Jack Roser, and we decided to start the Republican Renaissance PAC, and out of Carpentersville in his business. And so I traveled the state and vetted candidates all over the state, and we vetted great people, and but they didn't get elected. A lot of them didn't have the training, and we realized that the biggest weakness in the state, actually on both sides, the Democrat and the Republican side, is at the precinct committeeman level. There are roughly, outside of Cook County, which is a different animal, 6,000 precinct committeeman positions available to both Democrats and Republicans. And we're guesstimating, at least on the Republican side, and I think it's probably pretty similar on the but 90% of Republican voters have no clue what a precinct committeeman is. Yet it is the most important position in the party, because they're the ones that pick the county leaders, they're the ones that pick the state central committeemen, and then the state central committeemen are the ones that pick the leader for the party at the state level.
You know what, Jim? Our listeners our show is not heard in Cook County in Chicago. It's heard in northern Illinois and southeast Wisconsin. And so you have a listening audience right now, everyone who probably is clueless about Chicago and Cook County, which is why I love having this radio show, because I get to clue them in into what's happening there. But today, right now with you, we're kind of talking about these township committeeman positions, and this is exactly what our listening audience is aware of. They're aware of these individuals in their counties that run for office, and maybe they don't have all the details, but they could our listening audience, you could very well be talking and reaching out to, who knows, maybe 10, 20, 30 possible candidates to run for this. So how do they get in touch with you, and what kind of skills do they need to have?
Well, they can look up on precinctarmy.com, www.precinctarmy.com, and it tells them all about what a precinct committeeman is, what they do, how important they are, how to get elected. It has all the forms on there to get elected. Now, unfortunately, it's too late this election cycle because all the precinct committeemen will be elected at the primary, which is next month on March 18th. And the election will be 2 years from now. But we're trying to inform everybody out there that's a voter what the precinct committeeman position is, because it doesn't matter if they're Southern Wisconsin or Rockford or whatever, Deb. Most people don't know what it is. It's been hidden from them by their parties, both parties, by the way. And it's a critical position, and we need to recruit people on both sides, because it's the people that need. That's what this whole country was founded on, we the people. And the people need to get more involved so they understand what's happening at the leadership levels of both their parties.
Right, absolutely. And what does the township committeeman do? Well, like, first of all, it's not a paid position, is it?
No, it's not.
So they get no money.
On the Democrat side, most of them are basically, most precinct committeemen for the Democrats are public union workers, which is a problem, because the average
Why is that a problem?
country doesn't know, doesn't know that they're not properly. The precincts are dominated by public union workers, and they are taking care of their own interests. So what you hear politicians say is one thing. What they do is based on the interests of the public unions on the Democrat side.
So if citizens, basic citizens, homeowners, families, parents, want to have decisions that affect their community, be decisions that in fact are about the families and the communities there, then they need to run for these non-paying township committeeman seats and own them, don't they? Otherwise, it's just the interest of the union and the Democrat Party themselves.
Well, on the Democrat side, that's absolutely correct. We need more Democrats to run so that they're being represented properly. And on the Republican side, it's most county organizations have very little agenda, and they have no strategy in place, and it's really not their fault, because they don't get much guidance from the state party on the Republican side.
Yeah, but isn't that because there are non-aggression pacts and there are deals cut where, leave the Republican Party without sources, without candidates, and then you have no opposition to anything that the union leaders or the Democrat politicians want to do in their areas?
Well, and there's probably a lot of truth to that in a lot of different areas. I mean, people make deals, if you don't run anybody against me, I won't run anybody against you. When they're all the counties are autonomous organizations with no guidance or direction from the state party, then they do whatever they want. And maybe it's not always the right thing, the best thing to represent the people, but they do their own thing. If we had strong leadership at the party level, at the state level, I'm talking about the Republican side, because that's where the weakness is. Very strong on the Democrat side at the state party level. But on the Republican side, we need more people to step in and hold them accountable. And so we're building the armies of precinct committeemen on both sides to hold leadership accountable and to keep it a sustainable organization of decent, voting Americans.
Yeah, I almost think that the township committeemen, for those Democrat members of my audience who vote Democrat, who are just still trying to figure out where, if anywhere, within the Republican Party is there space for them. I think the important thing is if you're a conservative, if you're a decent person, if you're a conservative, and you happen to be voting Democrats, God knows why, because if you've been listening to my show, you know darn well that I'm trying to tell you all the reasons why you should never vote Democrat. But if you still insist, after listening to me and Jim Edwards today, then, you know, we're begging you, right, Jim, that these people who still want to do something, maybe change, take over their own Democrat Party, who are conservatives, to run as well. Challenge the machine. You know, get your head bashed in by them while you're doing it. At the very minimum, you'll run back to us and say, my God, you know, they're crazy and brutal in that party. So I encourage everyone to run, whether you're running as a Democrat and or a Republican, to get involved in this. Jim, can you tell us the information again of where they would contact to get a start in this direction, or who can lead them?
They can learn about it at www.precinctarmy.com. And what I would suggest, if people, especially, you know, you're talking about a lot of Hispanics, you know, Deb, you're Hispanic.
Yeah, 60% of my listening audience are Hispanic.
Conservative, hardworking, family-oriented people. If they think that they're a Democrat, you know, they should, I would suggest this, just go to a county Democrat meeting and figure what their agenda is.
Listen, I can guarantee every Democrat voting citizen listening to my show, and you owe me lunch I'll buy you lunch if I'm wrong. You can go to if you've never been to a Democrat meeting and there is a Democrat meeting in your community, I guarantee you that the minute you walk in the door, they're going to look at you like you're some rare dinosaur, and they're going to try to figure out why you're there. Who sent you there? What are you doing? Because the Democrats operate with lies in terms of they invite everybody to the meeting, but really that's just what they're doing. They only expect their own people to show up. And when people who are not part of their group show up uninvited, they want to know every detail about you to make sure you're not some double agent or some person who's coming in there who's going to disrupt what they're doing. And so you can join them as long as you'll do it their way, when they say and how they say it. And if you don't believe me, isn't that true, Jim? They can go see for themselves.
That's exactly right. I would suggest your listeners all over the place just go to a meeting and hear what they have to say, because the agenda will be geared toward the interest of public unions, not for much of anything else.
Yeah, so, you know, if you want things in your community, for your children's school, for yourself, for your church, whatever it may be, you need to get involved. You need to get involved, and you need to get in there, and you need to help, because no one's going to do it for you. I mean, Jim and I try all the time, but seriously, no one is going to do it for you in all your areas. So, Jim, really quick, I'm exciting things about your program and your outreach, and it's growing. This organization, did it exist before?
No, we started it about a year ago.
So it's a new organization. Is it a national organization or just specific to Illinois?
It's an Illinois organization.
Okay.
Well, it's actually a C4, but it's a Illinois leadership project. So our focus is in Illinois, and of course, as I said, Illinois is the political cesspool of the nation.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't mind me saying, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise to too many people, but the Democrats have been in control and they've wrecked this state, and the Republicans have been too weak to do anything about it. That's why we're building the armies at the bottom to hold both parties accountable.
I don't know that the Republican Party has been weak as much as the Republican Party has been naive and they've allowed the leadership who cuts deals with the Democrats to rule over them. And so really we need an awakening of our good Republican leadership to get a little bit more street smart, because you know that the political maneuvering and the puppeteering is happening in Cook County. Then they take those poor guys from little small town Illinois who don't have a clue what's going on and sort of think there's a gentleman's agreement between behavior and what they say and what they do. And that's not the case at all, because these city slickers in Chicago really have so many of our good Illinois legislators fooled.
Well, in the last many years, the state, the Democrats have been completely controlled by Chicago attorneys that are Democrat leaders. So the rest of the state has really not been properly represented.
The Bottom Line is a conservative space for news, as objectively expressed in transparency in their comments. The Bottom Line is transmitted from Monday to Friday from 8 to 9 p.m. Indiana Radio, Latina 5.0, from Latinos to Latinos.
The Bottom Line with the Gordials
is sponsored by El Sueño Americano newspaper, best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions: El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news, the best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome back to The Bottom Line. This is Deb Gordills, and my guest today is Jim Edwards on this segment. And Jim, you were the mayor of Sycamore, correct?
Yes.
Now, how many years were you the mayor?
4 years. It was about 15 years ago.
Okay, so 15 years ago, you were the mayor for 4 years in Sycamore, and you've worked with the IR PAC here, and now you are the founder and director of the Illinois Leadership Project. By the way, they do take donations if you're interested in writing them a check, because they're doing great things statewide. They can go to www.precinctarmy. Jim?
Yes, Illinois. www.precinctarmy.com.
Precinctarmy.com. That's www.precinctarmy.com. Now, Jim, today I told you that Tom Donaldson is also a guest on today's programming, and they've been involved in a couple of projects, but, sometime back, Tom and I had gotten together because he does a lot of Hispanic ads across the Midwest, and he's doing a great job giving the conservative message out. And he's connected with some guys who he works with, and they do a lot of research and polls. So they're part of America's PAC in researching and polls. And some of the guys that I met through him had asked me to give them a lead on getting the entire voter list of every registered voter in the state of Illinois. So I arranged it, and they got it done, and they got the material. And what they did is they took every registered voter and put them in accordance to zip code throughout the state. So they were able to tell us how many registered voters lived in every zip code. Okay, so that seemed fine, no big deal. Now we got a little chart there of every zip code. But something interesting popped up is that they took the recent census of everyone who lived in that zip code that was 18 years or older, who could be registered to vote, possibly be registered to vote, if they all registered to vote. But the weird thing happened is that, because you and I know that not everybody 18 years and over is registered to vote. You and I know that. However, in zip code 60604 and 60602, there were combined about 16,000 more registered voters than humanly possible according to the census. And so I took those two zip codes and I looked on my ward map, because, I'm all about dividing the city into 50 wards, and it turns out that it's the former Chicago chairman, Eloise Gershen's 42nd ward, along the Gold Coast there, that has all these fraudulent votes, because it's not accurate, it's not possible. Even if you had, I don't even know how you would have them. First of all, you would have to have every single person that the census says is over 18 and eligible to vote registered. But on top of that, they have another 12,000 that are combined in those two zip codes in that ward. And then in zip code 60636, there's over 12,000 registered voters above and beyond what the census say is possible. In 60636, which is Percy Coleman's ward area down there on the south side. And then just west of that, in 60628, they have almost 14,000 down there on the south side, more registered voters than the census says is humanly possible. So if you take the 14,000, the 13,000, that's 27,000, plus another 12 to 15, what kind of numbers are we looking at? Like over 40,000? 40,000 fraudulent votes that could possibly be used to win any election statewide. Now, there's 11 zip codes in Cook County that they just uncovered. In Cook County alone, 11 zip codes that total close to 75,000 registered voters that they don't know where they're coming from because the census doesn't have any of them.
Well, you remember, excuse me, when we worked on an election together in 3 or 4 years ago in Chicago, and you had a lady that was outside one of the polling places doing a physical count, and she knew most of the people that came in there and knew how they were going to vote. And then the machines at the end of the day spit out a tape that had the vote totals on it. And poll watchers and election judges can request a tape, which you did and we got. And it showed one vote, I think it did, in that particular precinct. One vote showed up because the machine wasn't working properly. Mm-hmm. And but then, you know, your lady counted 287 people that came in and voted. And later on in the day, when you go to Election Central online, you see that 343 people voted, and 98% of them were the opposite of what she said those her people voted for.
Yes.
We know they cheat. We've got evidence they cheat in Chicago all the time.
Yeah.
And you can go to Guam and mention Chicago, and they'll giggle because they know it is corrupt. And the problem is it's corrupt. The courts are corrupt. There's so much of it that's corrupt that what do you do about it? So
yeah.
I think there needs to be a federal investigation some kind of way of Chicago.
Absolutely. This is crazy. And these numbers are not lying. These are not things you and I came up with. The census is a federal agency who came in to count the people. And they count the people in Cook County. And then on top of the people that the census says are overwhelmingly in just a dozen of these zip codes in Cook County on the south side. So the Democrats want everybody to think that voter ID is about Mexicans, and those Republicans hate the Mexicans, and that's why they're pushing voter ID. You know, I wish the Mexican people would realize and that it's not the Republicans who are worried about voter ID. We need voter ID because on the south side, in zip code 60636, 60628, in 60619, in 60620, and in 60643. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 zip codes. And 60621. That's another black community. 60649. That's 7. In those 7 communities alone, we're talking about 65,000 registered voters above and beyond what the census says. They are black people. They are not undocumented. We need voter IDs in the black community because blacks are going back over and over again, voting over and over again, and getting money for doing that. They're giving them $10 to $15 every time they turn in a thank you very much for voting receipt that you get when you vote. And so the Democrats know that's how they steal the vote. So the Democrats are telling everybody, those darn Republicans, they hate Mexicans. That's why they want IDs. No, we want IDs not because of the Mexicans. We want voter ID because of all the black people voting on the south side over and over and over again because they can, because there's 70,000 extra ballots put out by Cook County David Orr's office, run by the Democrats, controlled by the Democrats. They put those ballots out so that they can send people around who have no IDs, since nobody's asking, to put the vote. And that's where the election's lost. Everybody says Bill Brady lost the Illinois governor's seat 4 years ago because he didn't go talk to some suburban women. He didn't end up going all over the state. Look at Brady could have been and visited every darn house in the entire state of Illinois, and he could not have done a darn thing about the voter fraud that stole his election. Quinn doesn't belong in the Springfield in the governor's house right now. That should have been Brady.
That's right. And that, we were looking at some of the statistics. We sent some of the election results to some Ivy League professors 2 or 3 years ago in Jesse Jackson's district and a couple other ones on the south side. And these are Democrat statistical professors from Ivy League schools that told us that the numbers are statistically impossible. I mean, there are precincts or wards where Jesse Jackson got 100% of the vote. And I don't care if you are a Superman or the most popular character on the face of the earth, you're not going to get 100% of anything. And so that was kind of telling, too. But we know, because you and I know they cheat all the time.
Yes.
And I know that also that Hispanic people are, for the most part, very faithful people, have strong faith backgrounds.
Yes.
Eventually, because of people like you, they're going to learn the truth. But it's tough because the Democrats have lied to them so long and have been very convincing with their lies.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me tell you something. Mexico has one of the best voter ID cards in the world. Do you know that to get a voter ID card in Mexico, you have to bring in 6 pieces of evidence: your birth certificate, you have to bring in your any other form of ID. You have to bring in a utility bill to show that you're living there. You have to show how many years of residency you have there. You have to show proof of it. Then you have to go and you have to apply. And if they approve your application, you have to provide a fingerprint, a photo ID, and a hologram that has your data on it. And it is a 2-sided, very, very tough ID. And then it's renewable. In 2 to 3 years, it's no longer valid. And everything is taken off of it. And so it can never be used to vote again. And you can't early vote, you can't absentee vote, you can't do anything until you submit this ID and it's recorded. It can never be used again. Voter fraud in Mexico doesn't occur at the ballot boxes. It occurs at tabulation. That's a whole nother story. But I'm thinking voter fraud in Chicago, in the state of Illinois, that's been stealing elections and controlling the House, in Springfield in the Senate for over 30, 40 years, and controlling who runs the governor's mansion. That is crazy. That is corrupt. You're right. Federal agents, everybody. This is the same. People try to wonder, how did Obama get elected with all of these problems? And how does he continue to get up there and lie and do whatever the hell he wants? Because he comes from Illinois. He comes from right here, Chicago. He comes from the training ground. He has been trained exactly the way they do politics in Chicago. They ignore you. They arrest you. They just tell you to, stay out of their business, and they do what they want, and they don't follow the rules, and they don't follow the laws. And other people in other states are baffled. Well, we're not. That's what they do here. And they're doing it with the damn voter ID so that they continue to steal the vote. Those darn machines, voting electronic machines, were brokered by Victor Reyes. Back in 1983, he sold them to Mayor Daley with the help of Madigan. And they bought these from Venezuela. So these electronic voting machines come from Venezuela. That's where they were manufactured and the software was created. When there was some ruckus about it some years back, right away they had the machines sold to a company in Ohio. So now they say, these voting machines are from Ohio. They're working on them. The darn software that's going to tabulate the vote in 3 weeks, that software is still owned by the Chavez family members of Venezuela. And they're a communist country. The people are getting shot in the street by them. Today, as you and I speak, they're fighting for democracy there. And here in Cook County, these darn leftists, communist crooks are using their voting machines. This is crazy, Jim. And so these voting machines and all of these ballots that are off the voter roll, these 70,000 people on the South Side, Mexicans need to stand up and say, hey, shut up and stop blaming us for the voter ID problem you have in Illinois, because it's got nothing to do with the Mexicans. They have their own ID. Do you know they took a survey that over 73% of undocumented Mexicans and Mexicans who are citizens of anywhere in America still possess their very proud, prominent voter ID from Mexico. They still carry it in their wallet, though they have an ID.
Certainly should be like that here. You can't do anything without an ID except vote. And there's a reason for that, as you know, because they cheat, and it's an easier way for them to cheat.
Well, they need to be renewable. These voter registration rolls that they have, and it's intentional. They intentionally don't have. There is just a postcard that I could send in. They intentionally don't have renewable voter ID cards because then they wouldn't lose all of the many of the possible ways that they cheat the vote. I don't know. Oh, but here's the recent news. Sharon Maroney, who you and I know from Defend the Vote, just told Jack Roser yesterday, who told me that the Board of Elections had a meeting and they are getting rid of the electronic voting machines, but not till after March. But they will not be around for November. Do you think it's because I've been on this radio show for almost 3 months, every day, 5 days a week, from 5 to 6 p.m., saying get rid of the damn voting machines. They're crooked and they're stealing votes on it. And I think that finally some people have called them up and said, you guys, they're on to you.
You are a driving force, Deb. You're a maverick. You are people like you that you are exposing the truth to the people. And we've got to keep on doing it because they've been brainwashed in Chicago and a lot of these other Democrat cities for a long time.
Well, don't say that too loud. I don't want them showing up at my doorstep tomorrow.
Illinois
I don't want the IRS auditing me.
The Bottom Line is a conservative space for news, as objectively expressed in transparency in their comments. The Bottom Line is transmitted from Monday to Friday from 8 to 9 p.m. Indiana Radio, Latina 5.0, from Latinos to Latinos.
The Bottom Line with the Gordials
Is sponsored by El Sueño Americano newspaper, best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions: El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news, the best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.